The Wisdom of the Ancients, by Francis Bacon. Chapter 7. Perseus, or War. Explained of the preparation and conduct necessary to war. The fable relates that Perseus was dispatched from the cast by Pallas to cut off Medusa's head, who had committed great ravage upon the people of the West, for this Medusa was so dear a monster as to turn into stone all those who but looked upon her. She was a Gorgon, and the only mortal one of the three, the other two being invulnerable. Perseus, therefore, preparing himself for this grand enterprise, had presents made him from three of the gods. Mercury gave him wings for his heels, Pluto, a helmet, and Pallas, a shield and a mirror. But though he was now so well equipped, he posted not directly to Medusa, but first turned aside to the Graii, who were half-sisters to the Gorgons. These Graii were grey-headed, and like old women from their birth, having among them all three but one eye, and one tooth, which, as they had occasion to go out, they each wore by turns, and laid them down again upon coming back. This eye and this tooth they lent to Perseus, who now judging himself sufficiently furnished, he, without farther stop, flies swiftly away to Medusa, and finds her asleep. But not venturing his eyes, for fear she should wake, he turned his head aside, and viewed her in Pallas's mirror, and thus, directing his stroke, cut off her head, when immediately, from the gushing blood, there darted Pegasus, winged. Perseus now inserted Medusa's head into Pallas's shield, which thence retained the faculty of astonishing and benumbing all who looked on it. This fable seems invented to show the prudent method of choosing, undertaking, and conducting a war, and, accordingly, lays down three useful precepts about it, as if they were the precepts of Pallas. 1. The first is, that no prince should be over-solicitous to subdue a neighboring nation, for the method of enlarging an empire is very different from that of increasing an estate. Regard is justly had to contiguity, or adjacency, in private lands and possessions, but in the extending of empire, the occasion, the facility, and advantage of a war, are to be regarded instead of vicinity. It is certain that the Romans, at the time they stretched but little beyond Liguria to the west, had by their arms subdued the provinces as far as Mount Taurus to the east. And thus Perseus readily undertook a very long expedition, even from the east to the extremities of the west. The second precept is, that the cause of the war be just and honorable, for this adds alacrity both to the soldiers, and the people who find the supplies, procures aids, alliances, and numerous other conveniences. Now there is no cause of war more just and laudable, than the suppressing of tyranny, by which a people are dispirited, benumbed, or left without life and vigor, as at the sight of Medusa. Lastly, it is prudently added, that as there were three of the Gorgons, who represent war, Perseus singled her out for his expedition that was mortal, which affords this precept, that such kind of wars should be chose as may be brought to a conclusion, without pursuing vast and infinite hopes. Again, Perseus's setting out is extremely well adapted to his undertaking, and in a manner commands success. He received dispatch from Mercury, secrecy from Pluto, and foresight from Pallas. It also contains an excellent allegory, that the wings given him by Mercury were for his heels, not for his shoulders, because expedition is not so much required in the first preparations for war, as in the subsequent matters, that administer to the first, for there is no error more frequent in war, than, after brisk preparations, to halt for subsidiary forces and effective supplies. The allegory of Pluto's helmet, rendering men invisible and secret, is sufficiently evident of itself, but the mystery of the shield and the mirror lies deeper, and denotes, that not only a prudent caution must be had to defend, like the shield, but also such an address and penetration as may discover the strength, the motions, the counsels, and designs of the enemy, like the mirror of Pallas. But though Perseus may now seem extremely well prepared, there still remains the most important thing of all. Before he enters upon the war, he must of necessity consult the Graii. These Graii are treasons, half, but degenerate sisters of the Gorgons, who are representatives of wars, for wars are generous and noble, but treasons base and vile. The Graii are elegantly described as hoary-headed, and like old women from their birth, on account of the perpetual cares, fears, and trepidations attending traitors. Their force, also, before it breaks out into open revolt, consists either in an eye or a tooth, for all faction, alienated from a state, is both watchful and biting, and this eye and tooth are, as it were, common to all the disaffected, because whatever they learn and know is transmitted from one to another, as by the hands of faction. And for the tooth, they all bite with the same, and clamor with one throat, so that each of them singly expresses the multitude. These Graii, therefore, must be prevailed upon by Perseus to lend him their eye and their tooth, the eye to give him indications, and make discoveries, the tooth for sowing rumors, raising envy, and stirring up the minds of the people. And when all these things are thus disposed and prepared, then follows the action of the war. He finds Medusa asleep, for whoever undertakes a war with prudence, generally falls upon the enemy unprepared, and nearly in a state of security, and here is the occasion for Pallas's mirror, for it is common enough, before the danger presents itself, to see exactly into the state and posture of the enemy, but the principal use of the glass is, in the very instant of danger, to discover the manner thereof, and prevent consternation, which is the thing intended by Perseus's turning his head aside, and viewing the enemy in the glass. Two effects here follow the conquest. 1. The darting forth of Pegasus, which evidently denotes fame, that flies abroad, proclaiming the victory far and near. 2. The bearing of Medusa's head in the shield, which is the greatest possible defense and safeguard, for one grand and memorable enterprise, happily accomplished, bridles all the motions and attempts of the enemy, stupefies disaffection, and quells commotions. The end.